Good morning and welcome to another episode of Money Matters. I'm Randy Mendez with the Mendez Home Team at eXp Realty, and I'm accompanied by one of my lending partners, Sharon Thompson Herman of the Herman Home Team at Celebrity Home Loans. Did I get all of that right?
You did.
Woohoo! Look at me go. Well, we are excited to be here today. And today when we were thinking about our topic, we were really thinking about things. And here's some good news. And we mentioned this on our last episode a little bit, but we've seen a little bit of buyer reprieve. So we've seen the ability to kind of, not be in a high risk situation for buyers come back to being a reality. And so since that is happening, we thought about, it is time to maybe re-engage some buyers. And also maybe it's time for those people that have been on the fence to really get serious again about purchasing a home. And so what we wanted to do today was just kind of talk about, am I ready to buy a house? And if so, where do I even start? Right, Sharon?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, because we're extra fancy nowadays, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our slide to share. All right. So let's talk about this a little bit. I am ready to buy a house. Where do I even start? Right? So drum roll. Obviously, number one, you need to start with figuring out how much money, how much house you can afford. And so, Sharon, what would you say around this? Do you have any pointers? I know we have a couple bullets to go over as well.
I know the first thing that I ask my clients is, what do you pay in rent? And I always think that that's a great jump off point. Like, what exactly are you paying right now? Because a lot of times we can match a mortgage payment similar to what the rent payments are, especially these days with the rents coming up so much. So that's kind of the first question I ask my clients is, what are you paying in rent? And what do you feel is comfortable in your lifestyle? Everybody's lifestyle is different.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful question. I have to say, I think when you start looking at that, it's like, wow. I mean, even if it's slightly higher, sometimes it's like an aha. Like for $100 more a month, I could be owning a house, right? But it is interesting that in this current market, we are often seeing that it's actually the latter. And it's, wow, for $200 less a month, I could own a house. And so obviously Dave Ramsey, who is a financial guru, if you follow him, he recommends 25% of your income should go to, I think that's to your mortgage, right?
Yeah,
To your payment,
25,
right?
sorry, 25% recommends 25% on your income. So I
Yep,
apologize, I didn't explain that better in the
that's
slide.
totally okay.
So 25% of your take home income or your gross income should be allotted towards your mortgage. So if you make, $5,000 a month, then you should be looking at a mortgage payment closer to 1250, somewhere along
Now,
those lines.
so now here's my question for you. What would you say? I mean, but if they're above 25, maybe they're looking at a house that's 35% or 45%. Is there a good guideline within lending of like where they'll max you out? I mean, I'm pretty sure they won't max you out at more than 50% of your income, but I don't know that. That's your side. Is there a max there?
I mean, the FHA allows you to go up to 55. VA allows you to go up sometimes to 60. So you can definitely do 50% of your income. And I think that, Dave Ramsey has a lot of great points around the 25% if you're talking about retirement. But we also have to look at what's good for our clients, which is
Right.
how many kids do you have? How many bedrooms do you need? And a lot of times, if we're just doing it on one spouse as opposed to both spouses, or somebody has, self-employed income or cash income, those things are all a little bit different. Like I said, this is just kind of a recommendation
Right.
because he talks a lot about retirement, paying off debt, and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think it's one of those things too that, calculated risk, right? What is best for your family. And I know I personally made a calculated risk, several years back to go a little bit higher. But then that paid off because again, you got to think about the big picture as well. So like what kind of possible equity gains are you going to see? What kind of savings are you going to see in, the payment actually going to your principal? Will you pull that door shut, Jordy? So anyhow, okay. So number 3 is make sure you and your spouse agree. So I definitely think that is a good one. And especially a powerful one. I will say though, I mean, sometimes, I think here's what you have to agree on. You have to agree on the money. I think you have to be flexible on the actual house, but I think you do have to agree on the money, right?
I agree 100%. I thought that was interesting when I was going through some different bullet points that I put that in there because I think a lot of times, you think you're connected with your spouse, you think that you know exactly what they would want. And, sometimes, being married as long as you have as well, that sometimes when you sit down with your spouse, you guys are off. You're
Yeah.
thinking we can afford her 2,500. He's like, no, I want to get a motorhome, 3 dirt bikes, and a downhill mountain bike. Well, that's my family. So no, we need a lesser mortgage payment. So it's definitely you have, I think, one of the first things is to sit down with your spouse or significant
Right.
other or whoever you're buying the house with and make sure that you are on the same page as far as what is our budget, what can we afford, and how can we still continue to live the lifestyle that gives us joy.
Yeah, I agree 200%. We recently did a refi, and then we started talking about, were we doing cash out or not cash out? And I had like all these big dreams, and my husband was like, you are not doing any of those things. So I was like, all right, okay. So yeah, I think that is a good one. All right, going to point number 2. And again, I think that this is one that sometimes we jump ahead and we just are like automatically thinking about, well, I don't have X, so I can't buy a house. So I would say that, how much should I save? This is like one of those areas that people eliminate themselves from purchasing, and you shouldn't, right? So talking about down payment and moving expenses, what thoughts do you have, Sharon?
I mean, a down payment is, once again, that's also just what works in your budget. A lot of people
Right.
get it. We talk to so many people that still think you have to put 20% down. And you don't have to put 20% down. It's recommended to avoid mortgage insurance. But if you take what, for instance, just even myself, what I paid in mortgage insurance compared to the equity that I gained this year, if I waited 6 months to try to save up a 20% down payment, or a year, however long that would take, I would have missed out on all this equity. So, when you say how much for a down payment, I would say, one, there's down payment assistance programs in every single state. There's a lot of grants and programs out there for people that struggle to save a down payment. And then the minimum that we have is 3%, all the way up to however much you want. So the big thing with this slide is, don't be scared of the down payment. Talk to a professional, and we can figure out what works in your budget based on what you can come up with for a down payment.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, because concessions are not really, concessions are not something we're seeing a tremendous amount of again, but we are seeing them here and there. And so again, that is another way. Obviously, concessions, just so we know what this is when we're asking for a seller contribution. So a concession cannot go to your down payment, but it can help with some of it can help with the closing cost and some of the other costs. So again, get in front of somebody and make sure that you're looking at real numbers and not just pulling numbers from thin air and counting yourself out prematurely. All right, well, sliding on to point number 3 is get pre-approved, right? And so I think these are all great points, but if you're really lost in points 1 and 2, like how the heck do I even do this? Just jump to point 3. Jump to point 3 and start the pre-approval process. Get in front of a mortgage professional and sit down in front of them. And again, this is the number one thing I say to buyers all the time. This is where I want you to pull back the layers, and I want you to be really raw, really honest and transparent. And I personally know firsthand that it can be tough to be vulnerable and show somebody all your moving parts, but do it and put it on the table, because by doing that and getting in front of the professional, this is where you're going to have somebody else that has that trained eye, that skilled expertise, that industry knowledge, that they're going to be able to go ahead and look at your puzzle and start saying, okay, here's what we need to do. And I always tell my clients, even if we can't bring the full picture together right now, we're going to have a much clearer direction of what we need to do to get there and get there sooner, right?
Absolutely. We've talked about this in the past, and it's just such a great reminder too, is when you look on those websites like Trulia, Realtor.com, and Zillow, and people are like just scouring through looking at houses, the payment that comes up on there assumes 20% down. And so a lot of times people are misled on what they can afford, because this is saying 20% down when you may only have 5% down. So that's why it's a great to get with a mortgage professional, like you said, and as a mortgage professional, we're like doctors or lawyers. We keep all your secrets to ourselves. Honestly, I can't even remember people's income or credit issues after I close them. Like, I just move on to the next one. Um, so let us be able to tell you what is your true purchase power, what can you really do out there, and what is going to be an affordable payment for that home. And one thing I tell everybody is, let's have realistic expectations and let's talk about the beauty of home ownership. Because the beauty of home ownership is not always getting your dream home the first time, but also getting into a home and upgrading to that dream home.
Yeah, I mean, there is no better vehicle to, creating wealth than real estate. And there's a whole nother side of, just the security of having your own home. I do want to tap on that a little bit and just say, be careful when you are looking at like those Zillow payments, because, when it is calculating in the 20%, here's a little pro tip that I have learned is that clients get really pumped because all of a sudden they think they can afford more than they actually can. And then when you circle back around, you get this deflated experience because now you thought you could afford a $600,000 house, and you can with 20% down. But you don't have 20% down. You have 3% down. And so we have a completely different situation. So I just want to remind you, we're not here to discourage you, but we're here to properly inform you so you can be equipped to get to where you need to afford that $600,000 house, right? All right. So jumping back to our slides real quick. Oh, like this might be my favorite one. So finding an agent. And I will say the way that it typically works is they, clients tend to look for houses, and then they talk to me, and then I'm like, okay, let's go back to step one. Let's talk to the professional lender. But with that said, this is also one of those things that we don't know what we don't know. And I'm surprised at how often people don't realize that the cool thing about being on the buying side of the process is there is not a fee for you. So the way that works, specifically in Nevada and in most states, I know California, I believe is the same, but the way that it works is there is a pre-negotiated price to sell a home, to sell a property, and this includes new construction, that is going to be paid by the seller, by the listing side. And whatever that is, they make that negotiation, and then they offer out X, and whoever brings the buyer gets X. And so that is where the compensation comes in. So I always tell my buyers, be pumped, be excited, because there is no additional cost for us, but just remember that when you get to the sell side, because it's a little bit different. But in all honesty, that is just like, in my opinion, the final reason why would you not have an agent, especially if it doesn't cost? Because here's the thing, we still owe you all the fiduciary obligations. We still have the licenses. We still have, again, the industry knowledge. We're going to be able to protect you. And at the end of the day, you are going to have a better experience, probably save more money, save headaches, save time, energy, be more well-informed, and make a better purchase, thus securing a better asset and sit in a better financial situation by hiring the agent, right?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because we do this all day long and we know all the fees that it takes to buy a home, close a home, and everything else. I do think it's interesting how many clients ask me, well, how much does it cost for you to take an application? And I'm
Right.
like, nothing. And I know some lenders do charge, some of the bigger banks, they might charge a $50 fee or whatever, but I don't charge anything. And I'm always kind of like, nothing. Everything's for free until you close. That's where we make, that's where we get paid. Same thing with real estate agents. I've had quite a few clients ask me like, well, how much is an agent? And I'm like, well, you're buying, so it's nothing.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and it is funny, right? I mean, it is funny that they're even on the sell side. I'm always like, your risk really. I mean, if we don't do our job, you don't have any risk. I mean, there are the one-offs of people that charge fees, but yeah, I agree with that completely. So now going to step 5, and this is probably my favorite, but finally go house hunting, right? So again, what we want to do is we want to make sure, just to kind of bring it all back together and recap, is sit down, make a conscious decision with whoever your significant other is about, okay, are we ready to do this? Let's do this. I would say, if nothing else, make a conscious decision to be willing and ready to go into, in the conversation with the loan officer, and get everything out there, put all your chips on the table, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Like, hey, I spend money on this randomly. Like, I've seen some interesting things come up. Like, where's this monthly reoccurring, debit going? And, I've seen some interesting, questions come up. So just get raw, get transparent. Allow your mortgage professional to really help you to identify what you can do, what your purchase power can do. Help them to run scenarios with you about, okay, here's what renting for the next 3 years looks like, and here's what ownership would look like, so that you understand not only the immediate, because I hear buyers always talk about the immediate. Well, I don't want to pay $200 more today, or I don't want to do this today, but what does that look like 5 years from now? What does that look like 10 years from now? So sit down and do that. And then as soon as you do that, again, if you have somebody, that's great. If you don't, Sharon would love to take that call. And then when you do that, and Sharon gets you all pre-approved, that's when I'm going to sit down with you. We're going to talk about realistically, all right, are we going to get everything we want? And how are we going to get his garage and her backyard and all that good stuff? And then we're going to hit the field and go hunting, right?
And that is the fun part, is actually shopping. Shopping.
I mean, I do want to say, just in full disclosure, I mean, we're still in a seller's market, so it's going to have its bumps and its bruises, but at the same token, at the end of the day, when you get those keys, there's nothing else that feels like that, and it's totally worth it. So as always, if you already have professionals, there's a lot of great ones out there. Pick up the phone, give them a call. But if you don't, I'm Randy Mendez with the Mendez Home Team at EXP, and you can always reach me at 775-379-8344. I would love the opportunity to help you out. And Sharon, how can they get a hold of you?
I am Sharon Thompson Herman. Still getting used to that. 949-201-8940.
For the record, Sharon, it doesn't ever, you never get used to it. Some days I'm Randy Mendez, some days I'm Randy Para, some days I'm Randy Mendez Para. It just doesn't, you never have a set thing. So, but I will say sometimes it comes in advantage, because I'm like, well, he's a Mendez, so today I'll be a Para. But thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget to, to follow us, so that every single Friday we're coming here. We're also on Instagram, where you can go over and like us. And we're regularly on a daily basis sharing money tips to help you, along this journey. So make sure you follow us on Instagram as well. All right. Bye, guys.
Happy Friday.